There it is, 70-20-10. Firstly, just to ensure that we're all on the same page, the 70-20 model is a guideline that any organisation seeking to maximise the effectiveness of their learning and development programs can use. And many organisations actually use this as the basis of driving their blended learning solutions. The framework suggests that individuals gain knowledge, skills and abilities on the job from a mixture of sources. 70% from on-the-job experiences and things that they do day to day, 20% from interactions with others, usually in the form of coaching or mentoring, and 10% from formal education. Now, back in 1987, when the original research into 70-20-10 was conducted, it was based on research into the optimal sources of learning for successful managers. Yet the 70-20-10 rule seems to have been used now for all forms of learning. There is even a whole online community devoted to 70-20-10. The original researchers, McCall, Lombardo and Morrison, were interested in understanding what made executives successful. And based on their research, which was a group of 191 executives, they summarised their findings as the lessons learned by effective managers were 70% from stretch assignments, not just on the job, but stretch assignments. 20% was directly from their manager in individual coaching, and 10% from reading materials and courses that they attended. Now that's going back to the early 80s, a time when there not a lot of formal training and development was delivered by organisations. So we've got to remember the context in which it was created. So the 70-20-10 concept is conceptual and a theoretical model based on the musings of 191 executives about what made them successful back in the 80s. It's actually not necessarily a complete recipe to develop people. And just because people learned a certain percentage from coaching, for example, in that day and age, doesn't necessarily mean that that is the ideal amount. So what is it that we are now to make of 70-20-10? Well, I think it's a pretty useful reminder that learning happens all the time. It's by observing, by making mistakes, through interactions with others, and sometimes through formal coursework. The right amount of training at the right time can have a significant impact, but whether that is 2% or 22% is impossible to say. And sometimes it's neither scientific nor necessarily useful to put a percentage on it. As learning professionals, we need to actually be really mindful of the fact that great performance is to do with people's capability. And so therefore we need to build their capability, sometimes very rapidly, in order to ensure that in their environment they're delivering the results that we need. So sometimes we can't necessarily just rely on learning over time on the job. We actually need to speed it up with some formal input to start with. So optimizing learning requires a mix of a whole range of things.